All right, so we're very fortunate to have with us Jane Esselstyn and Brian Hart. Jane Esselstyn is a registered nurse and a researcher who has co-authored the book Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, the cookbook. And that book was written by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. She's also created the recipe section of the New York Times bestseller Plant Strong, as well as an upcoming book, The 7-Day Rescue, both by her brother Rip Esselstyn, who is the founder and creator of the Engine 2 diet. Jane is passionate about plant-based diets, and she presents her can-do attitude about the power of plant-based eating with enthusiasm and a wealth of research. We're also honored to have with us Brian Hart, Jane's husband. Now, Brian himself is an educator who helps people make the transition towards a plant-based diet. He himself is an ultramarathon runner and educates the endurance athlete community about the benefits of plant-based diets for both performance and recovery. So thank you both for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great.
So what are the common barriers that you see people face in regards to preparing healthy plant-based meals for themselves and their families? What is the barrier to eating foods they know they should eat?
I really think that, simply said, it's overthinking. People think that they have to substitute, replace, figure out, measure, all this stuff, and it really is pretty much. It's so simple. Being a plant-based eater, I'm oftentimes embarrassed at how simple it is that we eat, and that we sort of take credit, if you will, for what Mother Nature already does so well. Everything is in perfect balance with the amount of fiber and protein and vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and water and everything in plants. So overthinking things, I think, can get in people's way, feeling like they have a scarcity of a certain amount of stuff and they need to replace with something. So keeping it really simple. Some other barriers are time. Like once you reboot your way of thinking about food, it's really easy. Like if I suddenly had to become what's it called?
Carnivore.
Carnivore. I couldn't even think of the word. If I had to become a carnivore, I would be like, okay, I have my biohazard gear on, my face mask, let's cook some chicken. Like I wouldn't know what to do. It would be so overwhelming. I think some people see a can of beans that way. And I think some people fear that they are not creative in the kitchen. And you know, if you're a creative person, you kind of have no problem. Once you get your guidelines going, you go and you roam. People who know they're not creative, there are so many amazing guidelines, blogs, recipes online, cookbooks. Heck, it's what I write.
In the conferences that Jane and I run together, we run these day-long conferences called Wrapping Your Head, Heart, and Hands Around Plant-Based Eating. And what we
They're
hear
small.
Yeah, they're small. We get 25 people together for 8 hours, and we really give them the research, but we also teach them how to do things and to get through the basics. What we hear for the most is, first of all, what do I eat? They're like, to them, it's like sticks and things. They have no idea if they're really, not knowledgeable. And the second one is, I have no idea what to eat now. So as if we've just taken everything possible off the table and said, now you need to eat completely new things. What people don't realize is that I bet most people don't even think about it, but like 50% of the things they already eat are plant-based. You just got to tweak them a little bit. You just got to tweak the recipes to make them more healthy. And so people, we always find the best way to win people over is you go to a party, you bring some food, don't tell them it's whole food plant-based. People eat it. They're like, wow, that's really good. And you say, glad you asked, because guess what? This is on our plan or whatever. And they say, oh, you guys are so healthy. I can't believe it. This couldn't be that. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And so, you win people over that way.
And even now I'm jumping out of the household, but when we do events at like big hotels or conference centers or with a caterer, like at their plant stock event in New York State with Engine 2, we have a mobile caterer. And when I work with them about how to cook some of this food, they're like, okay. And like, we're taking away their magic. We're taking away their grease, their sugar, their oil.
A lot of their salt.
And yeah, salt. So we're taking away their magic, but they've made this amazing salsa or salad or veggie burger or whatever it is. And they're like, you know what? I think we're going to get this in our regular rotation. And it's so cheap. So Okay,
What's
I
an
think
example? Give us an example of a recipe that can be easily tweaked. It's something that somebody commonly eats, and then just make this and this change, and now it's healthy, plant-based.
Do you mean a standard American
Yeah.
meal? Okay, lots of those. And pasta. Take your white pasta, make it whole wheat pasta, and don't put any oil on it when it's boiling, or I don't even know when people do that, but so it doesn't stick together. Let it stick together, whatever. And then red sauce is red sauce. Just, make it as clean as possible.
Yeah, if you can make your own red sauce, you should read labels on most store-bought red sauces, but they do sell some low-fat, no added oil red sauces. You just have to look for them or make your own. And that it's basic. And you put a little nutritional yeast on top of it instead of Parmesan cheese, and you get that same buttery taste without any of the life-robbing elements of cheese and meat.
And then I think a great model that's out there in America is something like a Chipotle or a Subway sandwich thing, because you can go there if you're a crazy carnivore, dairy eating person, or if you're not. And so at home, I always have mommy Chipotle, and we have brown rice, not white rice, and it's brown rice with no oil on it. I mean, I can chop up cilantro and put it in like they do it at Chipotle, but one of my kids doesn't like cilantro, so I don't. I would love to. I love cilantro. So you got brown rice and you have beans, and beans are beans. Actually at Chipotle, one of them is made with, I think, lard or some sort of oil. And obviously you don't have to do that. Beans, and then all kinds of lettuce, tomato toppings, guacamole if you are not having heart disease or struggling with especially type 2 diabetes. But salsa, fresh salsa is such a great, nutritionally rich, wonderfully tasting burst of food. And we make mango salsa, cranberry salsa, roasted corn salsa all the time, and our kids love that.
We have 3 teenagers, by the way, so we're field testing.
15, 16, and 18.
Yeah, so on a daily basis, we are field testing stuff that you can try to get teenagers to eat, which generally, the answer when a teenager's offered a new, interesting, weird food is no, absolutely not. And so every day we're trying to break them down, and we figured out kind of our staple 5 that they'll eat.
Last night was so cool. I mixed brown rice and black rice. So it was sort of this great mix. And then I had 2 cans of black beans, and I needed a third. So all I had was cannellini. So I had black and white beans with my black and brown rice. And we had red beets, and I had some, I don't want to call them white beets, but they were almost white beets. So I was like, look at this. This is like the yin yang dinner. The roasted corn salsa was kind of black and yellow, and the beets were red and yellow. Anyway.
So going back on what you were saying here, this is really cool. What are those staple 5 that, adolescents seem to like? Because that's a really big problem.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, we find at our conference, at RIPS conference, the Engine 2 conference in Sedona, this past year, we had a woman with some, who was there who had some health problems, and she has teenagers at home, and she finally cornered me and said, give me your 5, give me your top 5. I got to get my son to eat this way. And so I always think of it as pasta, beans and rice of some sort.
And there's lots of different shapes that can take, like the beans and rice thing. One night it's beans and rice, and then 2 days later you make a burrito, or 3 days later you take it and you make a quesadilla without the queso, so we call them dias. Go ahead.
Yeah, some sort of healthy pizza. So if you make your own crust, but there are some. What's the name of the company that makes the rice crusts that you can order frozen? Sammy's
Bakery. I think it's out of Dallas. Do you guys know Sammy's? It's gluten-free. They make a great one.
Yeah.
Engine 2 makes one.
Yeah, and Engine 2 makes one now. So you can get healthy healthy pizza crusts, but we just don't put the cheese on it. I mean, for those of you who are listening who have gone down that road and looked at some of these vegan cheeses, heads up, those things are chock full of fat. So just be careful. But we usually just put extra sauce and lots of vegetables and pineapple, and occasionally I'll sprinkle a handful of walnuts on there, and it gives it a little bit of that mouth soothing taste that fat gives you. Just a little bit of nut.
I don't like nuts on my pizza. I put nutritional yeast.
But so we got pasta, some sort of rice and beans, and that's going to probably be 2 meals right there. So it's rice and beans, and then maybe rice and beans as some sort of wrap. Pizza. And then veggie burger. We just love veggie burgers. We'll make our own. Jane will make beet burgers. We've made all different kinds.
SOB burgers, and smoky oat bean.
if you're desperate, there are some store-bought ones that are vegan safe that are, no cheese and are healthy. So you just got to find the right ones.
And again, Engine 2 makes, I rip, honestly, I have no conflict of interest there. But the Engine 2 does make a great products that do not have any added oil. We also have soup, like a lentil soup quite often with our kids. But that isn't alone. Like we always have like corn muffins, or I make these things called beer biscuits, just because I'm not gonna make buttermilk biscuits. I make beer biscuits.
She's trying to make our kids alcoholics.
Yeah, right. But you can use oat milk, or you can use oat milk and beer. It's just fun to have, like, hey, they're beer biscuits, and you've got teenagers. So anyway, just something. And every night we have salad, but also every night, freakishly, one of our staples, honest to God, is broccoli. I buy a broccoli crown. I buy the crowns, not the with the big stems, because the crown I just break it. I don't have to get a cutting board out. I don't have to get a knife out. I just have the pot with the water, and I break up the broccoli and put it in there. And if you guys listen to or have read Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die, he talks about how with the cruciferous vegetables, if you break them or traumatize them, cut them, prepare them ahead of time, at least 30 minutes, they release the good stuff. So it's just an extra bonus to always have that broccoli in there.
And our kids have always, so those are our 5. And I mean, really with teenagers, it's a version of those 5. It's really does not get, we do potato bar. It's our other one.
Yeah.
Ooh, tell us about potato bar. This is like a baked potato bar?
Yeah, baked potato, and then zillions of toppings, whatever you can get them to eat.
Sauces. It's all about sauces.
Yeah. The foundation of whole food plant-based eating really, I think, is in many ways the right sauce.
I mean, I seriously, if you have the right sauces, you can kind of go with any grain and green and bean on top of that. We have, a mushroom gravy almost all the time. Always have cranberry salsa around, mango salsa when the mangoes are good. When mangoes aren't good, you can't bother.
Though we're finding frozen mangoes actually are quite good.
Yes, we did recently.
So at potato bar as an example, if you had a traditional American potato bar, you'd get sour cream, you'd get cheese, and you get bacon bits to put on top of it. So what are some plant-friendly sauces that you cook instead of those?
By the way, I'm fresh off of getting my Ruby professional cooking certification, so I can spew recipes all day if people really want to hear all those. But
actually, I just handed in our cookbook with Rip that's coming out in 2018. And there was a huge, huge section on sauces, which I was like, who knew that we could keep inventing these amazing sauces? So we have this great sauce. Like I mentioned, the Mommy's mushroom gravy, which is, it's the first dish going at Thanksgiving, but it's wonderful on the potato bar, just as a foundation. We make this great dish called kale butter, and it's got a cooked sweet potato, a whole bunch of kale, which when you strip it and cook it down, it's about 2 cups cooked. And it's just this green, I call it butter because it's just thick.
It looks like pesto.
Thick, almost like the texture of non-dairy cream cheese. You know what I mean? Like a cooked sweet potato can have that structure to it, that the carbohydrate set. And beet butter, sort of a very similar dish made with beets. There's some walnuts in that one. I mean, a few just to give it that a little.
But I think you're asking about toppings though, like sauteed onions and peppers and mushrooms, even black beans sometimes, lots of greens, as much as we can get greens, whether you're talking about beet greens, salad greens, kale, collards, anything we can. Just
scallions, chopped tomatoes, chopped peppers. Water chestnuts sometimes are fun to put out there because people like a little snappy crunch.
Roasted corn, frozen, which is fine. You just thaw it. And even edamame, so shelled edamame will be on there. And again, if you combine all these amazing toppings with a really good sauce, then you're golden, just perfect.
Like we have 20 people in our family, and we're all plant-based, and they're all coming a week from today, and we're hosting dinner. And I'm thinking, what are we gonna have? The answer is a potato bar, because we've got some 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 8-year-olds, teenagers, old folks, my parents. Who are, the head of it all. And everybody will love this because the little 4-year-old will have just plain potatoes. But what kind of potatoes do we get, you ask? Those little purple, you're rolling your eyes because they're so good. They're so cool. You cut them open and you're like, yes, this is a little bit of magic. And the red ones and gold ones and purple ones, it's just so fun. It is so fun.
You know, speaking of potatoes, I was doing a little bit of research on different potato varieties because it seems like different times of the year you get different colors, different shapes, you name it. I didn't know this, but there's something like 3,000 different varieties of potatoes.
3,000?
Yeah, I mean, you got the sweets, you got the purples, you got the yams, you got the oranges, you got the big, you got the small, you got the red, you got the, you name it. But I know down in South America where they a lot of them grow, down in Peru, I think it is. They just got thousands of varieties. So I'm glad to hear you talk about these small purple potatoes because they're packed with antioxidants. They taste like $15, and they're really easy to prepare.
Yeah, and actually, and I just think in terms of, you know, from the whole presentation standpoint, you know, you get a big table full of all these different toppings and then a bowl full of all these colorful potatoes. I mean, that's a very attractive, visually attractive.
It's beautiful
as well.
Absolutely.
Actually, I host every March a conference called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease for Women. And it's just, you know, your goodie bag when you come in is actually a grocery bag of food. And we dance at the breaks. And it's just, it's all focused on heart disease in women. And of course, I know it's also helping everyone with diabetes, pre-diabetes, type 1, type 2. But what we're having for lunch is a sweet potato and potato bar with all these toppings we're discussing, because I really want people to walk away with like, oh, I can make potatoes on Monday and have them all week long. Just make a ton of toppings and have it every other day, or have friends over. I really want this to be can-do, hands-on, active learning.
Yeah.
But some people don't, they're scared of potatoes, but they've got it in their head that they can have a sweet potato. You guys, I'm sure you hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Don't you hear it all the time?
Absolutely.
So
no question.
Even people who are not living with type 1, they are scared of potatoes. Oh, it's a star or whatever.
It's a carb.
Carb, the worst word invented. But having sweet potatoes and having the variety of other potatoes there, I think is going to make people be like, oh, this is okay to eat.
Yeah.
So thrilled for that new luncheon.
Okay. So this is a perfect segue because the next question was specifically about diabetes, right? We've heard you discuss the term plant perfect before, specifically in relation to people with heart disease. So can you explain, A, what does the term plant perfect mean? And B, how does that pertain to people living with any form of diabetes?
Okay, I'm gonna take this one. Plant perfect actually came around because my brother Rip started, Engine 2, his first book came around, and he was plant strong. And he had a little bit of a difference in the parameters of what he was pushing for people to eat versus what my dad, whose book is Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, was all about. The only difference between these two guidelines is a little bit of nuts in Rips and a little bit of like avocado. That's pretty much it. There's both of our books, Plant Perfect, Plant Strong, no meat, no dairy, no added oil, minimal salt, minimal sweet. When I say sweet, I mean like mostly maple syrup. It's the only sweet we tend to use just because it's liquid form and it's got some water in it. It's got some other minerals in it, and it's really flippin' expensive. So you get the built-in governor. Anyway, so
you can't chug it.
So Plant Perfect is no meat, no dairy, no added oil, minimal salt, minimal sweet, no nuts, no avocado. I mean, with heart disease, my dad is a stickler. None of that. So when my mom and I did the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease cookbook, we were Plant Perfect. And this really is a perfect book for people with diabetes because, to be very oversimplified about it, basically, and you guys know the ins and outs of the anatomy of all this, and you can edit this out if you don't like it, but basically on all of our cells, we have receptors. And these receptors are waiting for insulin to come along, insulin in the shape of a cell phone here, to come along, dock on, and drop off the insulin that it has there. So it just drops it right off and it goes to the cell. Oh, it feels great. So as we all know, people with type 1 don't make insulin. They don't make that, so they got to get this glucose there otherwise. People who have type 2 or have trouble tend to have something blocking this receptor. So along comes the insulin. Hey, I want to dock on here, but it can't figure out how to dock on because something's in the way. What this tends to be, again, oversimplified, is intramyocellular lipid. Intramyocellular lipid. Big word, I know. But that tends to build up in the cell and block or keep insulin from being able to drop off. So people who go on a plant-based diet and they're plant perfect and they stop eating the meats, which are all covered in saturated fat and cholesterol and everything, and the dairy, which is all saturated fat and fats, and the processed food with fats and cheeses, and all that stuff. They just get off that. All of a sudden, this starts to happen. They start to find that their receptor clear off, and they start to have insulin be able to dock on, and the glucose can then drop into the cell. So being plant perfect has turned around so many diagnoses of type 2 diabetes.
When we work with Engine 2 and we do these 7-day retreats, it is common, not just not uncommon, but it's common that within 3 days people are cutting their insulin intake down
or their diabetes meds.
Or their diabetes meds are cutting it in half in 3 days, and then by the end of the week going off it. I mean, that's amazing. If you think about the turnaround of how quick that happens.
I mean, some people take longer. They've got the intramuscular lipid buildup within it's an organelle in the cell. But having people understand it with that, like I use trucks and balls and capes to describe it all. And they go, oh, that's what diabetes insulin resistance is? Like the insulin just can't get into the receptor? And we're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. You just have too many leaves in your gutter. You've got too much hair in your drain. You've got to get it out by not putting it in.
I love your guys' enthusiasm. It's unbelievable. So good.
Give us a metaphor. What would you call it? Give us a metaphor.
The metaphor that I use is one I learned from Matt Letterman, and it's think of it like a bathtub. If you have the water running in the bathtub, if you clog the drain, the water will spill over the edge. It's kind of like what's happening. You have a high blood glucose reading, but it's not the sugars that you're eating. It's not the carbohydrates that you're eating. The fact that the faucet was running is not the problem. It's the fact that the drain is clogged. So it's the same thing that's happening inside people's cells.
And it's amazing. I mean, I've seen numerous times when Jane's giving her talk or Dr. Esselstyn's giving his talk, and some of the stuff's being covered. People with diabetes are in the audience like, oh my God, really? Like I was told not to eat carbs. I mean, and these are doctors are telling them this. It's just shocking.
Can I tell you a quick story about my research?
Please do.
It has to do with diabetes and all this. I am a nurse, and I work with the Cleveland Clinic, and I worked on a study that was published in February of 2015 in the Journal of Pediatrics. And what the study was is we took a group of obese kids between 9 and 18 years old with high cholesterol and who were obese. And we put them on a plant-based diet or the American Heart Association diet. And after 1 month of being on plant-based or American Heart Association, we checked how it worked. So we had all the numbers before and numbers after. Guess what happened?
Tell us.
Well, at the end of a month, they knew that all these kids, and our kids all had parents with them, so we actually had twice as many data points, but all the kids improved on both diets, which was great. I mean, hooray. Getting them off McDonald's every day or whatever they were eating. I'm making that up, but getting them off just standard American nightmare food is going to help anybody. So the American Heart Association group decreased their arm circumference, their waist circumference, and their overall weight, and their MPO, which is an inflammation marker in the blood. The plant-based group, so they had 4 markers. Plant-based group had 9. Decrease in blood pressure, decrease in insulin, decrease in LDL, total cholesterol, decrease in MPO, CRP, body weight, blah, blah, on. We have 3 kids. We don't want them just to have little arms and little waists. We want them to be healthy from head to toe. So during my 1 month, I was the teacher for the plant-based group, obviously, and I would meet them every weekend. So on week number 3, so just 2.5, so this happened 2.5 weeks with the group. So on week 3, this girl comes in, and she's 18 years old. She's now a young woman, and she said I can use her name. So I'm going to use her name. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Please.
Her name's Sarah. So Sarah walks in, and she's like, I am so mad. I'm so angry. I'm so pissed. I look great in these jeans. And I'm like, you're giving me a little mixed message. Like, you're so mad, you're so pissed, but you look great in your jeans. These are my favorite jeans. I look great in them. I'm so pissed. And I'm thinking, what's going on? I'm getting this mixed message. And she's like, I'm in college and I have a special dorm with these special alarms and all this stuff because I'm type 2 diabetic and I'm going to be that forever. And my parents are over in this part of town worried about me if I don't check it every day at this time with my alarms, my this and my that and my blood sugar and my levels. And I almost died this week because I am not diabetic anymore. I've been taking these meds and they're overworking and I passed out. I am not diabetic. I'm so pissed at these doctors who let me, an 18-year-old woman who looks great in her jeans, think she was going to be diabetic her whole life long. I don't have it. I was ready for my whole life, and in 2.5 weeks, it's gone. So I was like, I wish I could record this. And sure enough, I was giving a speech last summer, and she was in the audience. There were 400 people, and she was like, I will come on stage, and I will tell you the story. Sure enough, at the end, she was on stage. She was telling her whole story, looking great in her jeans. But it was because she just got off all of the added fats and the meat and the dairy and adding oil and the processed foods. And in 2.5 weeks, this young girl reclaimed her life. I loved it.
Welcome to the world in which Robbie and I live. We run an online group coaching program for people with all forms of diabetes. And we see this over and over and over again. We see it with people with type 2 and pre-diabetes who are able to get off of their glucose medication, such as metformin, their insulin sensitizing medication. They'll also get off blood pressure medication. They'll also get off statin medication as a 1, 2, 3 punch. And then in people with type 1 diabetes, we see them decreasing their insulin use by 25, 30, 40, 50, 60%, even though the total amount of carbohydrates.
You're such great messengers. I mean, you're sort of these lean, mean, handsome beings that probably intimidate some people, but it's the truth. It's the truth. So I love sharing that story about Sarah just because she's telling these like 9, 10, 11-year-olds and they're all like, Sarah's all mad. What's going on? But it's a narrative they need to be aware of, especially at a young age.
Well, especially because none of the doctors are saying, oh, and then there's this diet option. Nobody's saying that. They're saying, take these drugs, take these, this is what you got to do for the rest of your life. Nobody is doing what they should be doing, which is saying, hey, there's also another option.
It's unconscionable.
Yeah.
Agreed. We actually had one of our young clients. She's a 13-year-old girl. So she's in middle school. She's living with type 1 diabetes. She goes to her doctor. She gets her A1C value checked. They measure her A1C. She's come down by almost a full percent since she started working together. So since she started changing her diet. The doctors ask her, they say, what are you eating these days? And what changes did you make to your lifestyle? So she explains to them, well, I'm on a plant-based diet now. I've dropped my fat intake and I'm eating a lot more carbohydrates. They went and got the social worker to come into the room and lecture to her and explain to her that what she's doing is irresponsible, and also to make sure that the mom understands that if the mom is to continue to advocate this, that maybe the mom is putting the daughter in a dangerous position. And I'm sitting here thinking,
what was her A1C though?
Her A1C started out in the mid-8s and it had come down to the mid-7s.
And they were complaining about that.
Well, what they're complaining is about the way that she's decreasing her A1C.
The standard of care isn't addressing the issue, mofo.
Let's stop and think about this for a second. So the main thing because she's a very active teenager. So she plays sports. So she needs to eat a lot of food. So there were times where maybe she had a meal where maybe that meal had like 200 grams of carbs or something. And to them, that's crazy. But for an active person following a low-fat plant-based diet, that's totally normal. So, the state of our society right now is that a teenager goes to their medical doctor, and the teenager is eating plant-based foods, lots of potatoes, rice, fruit, greens, and all this stuff. And the doctor is actually concerned that a teenager is eating a bunch of healthy plant-based foods she's making on her own at home with her mom. It's like, what is going on?
Right. Dr. Esselstyn has so many stories of his patients go to their general care physician and they're like, well, we're concerned because your HDL's low. And they're like, well, that's because I'm not eating a lot of fat, and here's why. And they're like, no, we want you to start taking fish oil pills because your HDL's too low. It's crazy.
Right.
Everything's healthy. Well, I hope that girl just said that they were going to get a new school.
Yeah, we're going to have to work with that situation to sort of, I mean, my take home message was, listen, the doctors, the social workers, the entire medical staff there needs to be educated. They need to open their mind to the idea that there's maybe some form of nutrition that they don't know anything about. And until they learn about it, they cannot put a judgment on it. They cannot send a social worker and say, you're irresponsible. Something bad is going to happen to you.
Right. Yep. Yep. We've had clients who've gone home and their GPs or that will say you're putting your life in your hands by eating this way. You're actually, you're doing risky things, as if they were taking some experimental drug that they imported from Mexico or something.
Correct.
Crazy. All right. So you talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to go into depth on this. Is it possible to follow this diet without spending your entire life in the kitchen? What are some hacks for doing this quickly, efficiently? What do you got?
Well, it's funny. Having just handed in 2 new books with Rip, I feel like I've been saying it so much in my mind, but maybe people need to hear about it again. But we talk about batch cooking, and there's sort of 2 types of batch cooking, and I'm sure you guys have heard all about this. But batch cooking, you can do it while you watch House of Cards, while you watch This Is Us, while you watch football games, or if Downton Abbey reruns, whatever you're into. You get the potatoes in the oven, a whole sack of potatoes, just cook them, or a tray of sweet potatoes, or get the rice cooker going, or the whole, what's it called, steel cut oats, or barley, or quinoa, whatever you're into. Cook it ahead of time on Saturday, Sunday, or whatever day is your weekend day. But it's passive. It's happening while you are on a run, watching these shows, taking the dog for a walk, shopping. I don't even know whatever they're doing. That's totally passive, and it gets a leg up on the complex carbohydrates that oftentimes take the most amount of time to prepare. You can get beans in a can, which take 2 seconds. So that's not an issue. If you like to have your beans slow cooked, you probably are savvy in the ways of slow cookers, Instapots, whatnot. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to like the busy parents coming home, both of them. Okay, we got rice, throw in the microwave. Beans, drain them under hot water. They're warm. Okay, you chop the romaine. It'll take 4 seconds to chop it. Throw out some salsas that you've made. The active batch cooking for me comes about salsas and sauces. When I make mango salsa, I try to get like 3 or 4 good mangoes. I don't ever buy one. Lordy. I buy as many as I can because I want to make a ton of this mango salsa. Message being, eat as much as you want, kids. And also, I'm going to have enough for my own lunch tomorrow, or for Brian and me to have, for dinner while the kids are all at a swim meet or whatever. Making enough of that. Make a ton of this. Our kids like this. I make a lo mein noodle sauce. I make a ton of it because if they want to have it for lunch on a weekend, there it is. But just to have actively and passively batch cooked, it just sets you ahead.
A great example of that is potatoes. We mentioned potato bar. I mean, Mondays in most family households is often the busiest time of the week. It's everyone's getting all the homework they have for the week. You're sorting out lots of things. So if you can throw a bunch of potatoes on a tray on Sunday morning while you're watching whatever, or you're sitting around, or you're watching we watch the Browns lose every week. While we do that,
a new quarterback gets injured every week.
We watch the quarterback be carried off the field in a stretcher. Then we just throw a bunch of potatoes and then 45 minutes to an hour later, they're done. You pop them in the refrigerator, and then Monday night, when everyone comes home frustrated with lots of homework and they just got out of their swim meet, you microwave those things, and you have a couple of toppings, throw some greens on there. It's all about having stuff in the house that's ready to go. Because you guys both know, as soon as you walk in and you look at the cabinet and you say, oh, I have no idea what to make, that's when you start doing all the bad habits, right? So if there's something fatty in the house, you're a little bit hungry, next thing you know, you're eating a handful of cashews, or you're just, you're doing all the things you shouldn't do.
I wish I could take the camera around our house and show you stuff we have, like in our freezer. We have a freezer in the bike, his bike room, Mr. Endurance Athlete.
Are you using a laptop right now?
Yeah.
Just grab the laptop. We want to see what type of staples you got in the house.
Okay, well, I've got all these Sammy's pizzas crushed. Because I cut them into slices sometimes, and I pretend they're breadstick kind of things. I mean, there's nothing on them. The kids dip them in the red sauce. Oh, breadsticks! And I'm like, it's just a slice of pizza. And like, well, here.
Yeah, grab the laptop. Let's show us. There we go.
We've got, this is all of our black rice. Like, shoot, can you, I don't know how to turn it around like a phone. These, it's going to be a mess. So we got rices in there. We've got, you know what, it's going to be, oh, here.
Can Brian hold the computer for you?
Yeah.
There's sweet potatoes hanging in here all the time, all kinds of potatoes, squashes. We've got rice in bins. I don't want to activate. Sorry.
Yeah.
Great. That was great.
As soon as Jane got up with the computer, I was like, this is going south.
No.
The dogs having.
It's good. You have potatoes. You have rice. What else do you have in your cupboards?
We've got racks of beans, stacks.
Lots of canned beans.
And dried beans. We've got
I would argue that these days, anybody who says that they can't be plant-based because it's too hard
or too expensive,
I'm gonna call BS on that. And here's why: is that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when Ann Esselstyn, my mother-in-law, was trying to be a vegetarian, when she and her husband, Dr. Esselstyn, were transitioning. 30 years ago. I mean, you had to go to the freaky natural food store like 2 hours away and hang out with people that all reeked of patchouli, and they had to like import weird mushrooms. I mean, these days we go to Trader Joe's down the street and you can get pre-cooked rice in a bag that you microwave for 5 minutes. I mean, there's no sourcing strange, kombucha pastes from odd places. I know, but you know what I mean? Like, you can go to Giant Eagle, which is our local grocery, that's working class, regular grocery store, and you can find.
You go to Walmart.
You can buy pre-cooked quinoa in a bag. Yeah. I mean, that's saying something.
You're talking about important stuff here, and you said this in the beginning that people overcomplicate things. But I just want to hear from you guys. You're saying that somebody living with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, you're saying that they can go and they can pick up rice, and cook it in 5 minutes in a microwave or something, and you're saying that's okay for them?
Absolutely. I mean, frozen
brown rice.
So frozen fruits and vegetables, I'm sure you guys have probably talked about this with some of your clients and your community, is that often frozen vegetables and frozen fruit is actually better than fresh sometimes, because it's been picked and frozen immediately. So it doesn't ride on a truck for 2 days to get to the market. So
and there's no waste with it. I don't love frozen stuff, but I use it in cooking and making sauces and stuff sometimes. But I mean, our kids totally prefer fresh, but it's all good. And
I think your point about overcomplicating is so key, is that people think that they need to be able to make some sort of really complex dish to be a vegetarian because they're trying to replace the satisfaction of meat and dairy by making really complex things.
Because their mindset is scarcity. Their mindset is that they're scarce. They're missing something.
Yeah,
and they're not.
What a lot of people forget is that the way you should look at transitioning to a plant-based diet, in my opinion, is to start to see all the amazing things you're going to get out of being plant-based. Not what you're going to give up and suffer under, but the fact that you're going to get all these amazing things, and it does not need to be overthought at all. If you think about the way the world has operated for thousands of years, what people have eaten, it's some sort of grain, some sort of starch, some sort of legume. It's basic stuff.
Pulse, they're called pulses.
Yeah, pulses.
I didn't know this. They're called pulses.
Okay, but this is actually a really important point here, because if you ask people in the plant-based community, what have people been eating for the past 5,000 years? Like, what were our ancestors eating, and what is the more natural human diet? People in the plant-based community will tell you what you just said. Lots of starches, root vegetables, things you can pick off of a tree. If you go to the paleo community, you ask them the same question. They say, oh, you eat a bunch of animals. You kill animals, you eat animals, and then every once in a while.
Tell them to go outside one night, sleep outside that night, and tell them to kill an animal the next day. See how much energy they have. Well, you know they had to dig up roots to make it happen.
I'm sure you guys have seen speakers talk about and take to task the whole paleo
Brenda
thing.
Davis does a beautiful job. Yeah. Interview her immediately.
Brenda Davis has a whole thing on paleo. The myth of paleo. There's actually a TED Talk on YouTube that you can check out, where this anthropologist with a doctorate, PhD in anthropology, just takes to task this whole concept of what paleo people think paleo people ate, and it's a complete lie. They were eating, if anything, if they were eating meat, they were eating incredibly lean, small game
in small amounts.
In small amounts. They were not sitting down to the 15-ounce porterhouse, and they were mostly eating legumes, tubers, and not to mention the fact that most of the vegetables they were eating were like, an eighth of the size of the ones we have today. So anyway, it's not even worth it. If anybody comes to you with this idea of paleo, you can slice and dice that 16 different ways. It's just a joke.
You guys, I know our time's getting tight here, but I want to say we do have 3 teens, and we're both athletes. I swam for Michigan on scholarship. He's Mr. Ultra Athlete. I do yoga and run these days because I like that. But our kids swim big time. Like, they're all in high school. Our daughter is 6 feet tall. She's got the Ohio high school record in the 200 IM, which is all the events. Our son is 6'6" and a half, 158 wet. And he's got a phone call with Auburn tonight for being a swimming scholarship. Who knows? I mean, we're not thinking he's going to go south. Who knows? Hopefully no one from Auburn's watching this. I doubt it. But
It's the diabetes belt.
And then we have a 9th grader it's where a 9th grade girl should be. She's starting to grow and develop and change, and like, she's kicking some booty in the pool as well. My point is, they're tall, fully developed, athletic, strong, achieving, and they're plant-based. I cut up probably 16 oranges every 2 days, and they eat like, section after section of section of oranges, broccoli, grains, greens. It's just beautiful what they eat and what they're made of. I mean, they're kids. They love it when someone gives them a bag of Nature Valley peanut butter granola bar. Like, oh my God, they think it's like a, crack. And anyway, so kids are okay on a plant-based diet.
Our kids aren't pig.
It's really good to hear you say that, actually, because, there's a lot of folklore out there. There's a lot of confusion as to whether or not it's even safe, or I should say ethical, to raise a kid on a plant-based diet. But we just talked about that earlier. So, your kids are living examples of it. The research supports that eating a plant-based diet, not only is it not detrimental, it's actually beneficial in, hundreds, if not thousands of ways. So here's one question for you that everybody asks all the time, right? This is what we advocate, what you advocate, is getting rid of using oils, olive oil, coconut oil, corn oil, rice bran oil, and canola oil, any form of oil, right? How do you cook without oil?
You just use a pan and heat. Seriously, it's that simple. Done. You heat up the pan when it's hot, not when it's heating up. When it's hot, you put the onion in there, the mushroom, whatever you're cooking, and it'll release the fluid. You have to stir it. If you have a little bit sticking to your pan, add water. It lifts off the caramelized onion. Or if they're mushrooms, just wait. I seriously step away and wait. All the water comes out of the mushrooms, and they start to brown, and they smell amazing, and they smell like mushrooms, not like grease and salt. We're so used to putting melted chapstick, oil, around all of our food. We're so used to having that flavor, that taste of sunscreen, oil on our food. And we have to stop that and just start tasting the food. Cooking without oil is literally that simple. There's this stuff called parchment paper. It's not wax paper, but we put it on all of our cake pans, all of our trays. I make scones almost every night for our swimmers. They're made with almond flour and oat flour, maple syrup, and some nuts or some dark chocolate chips or something. And they are just a mountain of plant-based calories, because I've got to get food. They swim like 4 hours a day, and they've got to get calories in. We don't eat all these scones all the time, but they do. They love it. And I cook it on parchment paper, and it browns lovely on the bottom, but I'm not going to give them any extra extracted oils. So parchment paper, no.
We talk a lot about it. I'm sure you do too, with the educating that we do about calorie density. I'm sure you guys do a whole thing on calorie density, right? And so, especially if you're struggling with a weight issue, obviously you're dealing with people that are struggling with insulin and sugar, and you just have to be really aware of how many calories you're taking in. And so when you look at, I'm sure you've seen the charts, added oils are just unbelievable in the amount of calories that you're getting. So if you want to be able to eat as much as you can, as much as you want, that's sort of a loose interpretation. You got to watch your calorie density. And so
oil is the most calorically dense food on the planet, period. And what's the definition of a junk food? What's the definition of a junk food? It's something that is high in calories and low in nutrition. And you cannot beat anything. A Snickers bar is more nutritious than oil.
Than olive oil. Yeah.
Than oil. So just because it has other components to it. I'm not selling that. I'm just saying that.
This is great. I'm glad to hear you say this because
oil, it's really simple. People are getting all complicated about oil. Just don't have it in your house and you're fine.
And the big one these days is coconut. Everybody thinks that because coconut is like the new, coconut is the new black or something. Like coconut is now being considered healthy. And people don't realize that coconut is actually more saturated than a lot of other fats that are out there. It's actually worse for you.
Perhaps I won't talk about it if you guys have talked about how hydrogenated oils kick off the block and then in came coconut. Did you guys have Jeff Novick's information about all that?
Go for it. Tell us. Go for it.
It's 4:00 and I'm aware your time is tight. But basically, how many years ago did you guys start hearing about like coconut oil, coconut loofah, coconut water, coconut this, coconut that? How many years ago?
I would say I probably started hearing about it about 7 to 8 years ago myself.
Exactly. And about that time is when hydrogenated oils were being kicked off the block. They never had them in Europe, and New York City kind of was leading the charge on that, saying we're not going to have any hydrogenated oils. So when we as consumers started voting with our dollars, like we don't want to buy those Hydrox or those Toll House, whatever, made with hydrogenated oils, they were like, oh my gosh, we can't use these. What are we going to do? We need a shelf-stable oil. We need a hydrogenated oil that's never going to break down on the shelf. It's going to stay here for years. What are we going to use? They can't go to butter because people don't want butter. They can't go to lard, which is kind of the same amount of saturated fat as butter. So they were like, do we dare go all the way up here to 92% saturated coconut oil that we've known about for 6 bazillion years? Do we go and use this oil we've never touched because it's so bad? They're like, oh, we're going to do it. So coconut oil made its way into our culture, if you will, anew, along with the palm oil, all that stuff, only because it's a saturated fat. The hydrogenated oil was kicked off the block. And it's destroying the planet. It's destroying our bodies. It is so high in saturated fat. People argue, well, there's 2/3 of the part of the fatty chain. Stop. It is so much worse.
Yeah. So what you're touching on here is the fact that an unsaturated fat is a liquid at room temperature. A saturated fat is a solid at room temperature. So coconut oil comes from the plant world. It's quote unquote natural, but because it's a highly saturated fat, it solidifies at room temperature. So you can use it like a butter. You can spread it on things, and it's easier to sell and market because it's actually a solid. And so as a result of being a solid, now there's this entire marketing about it that says it's healthy for you because fill in the blank.
Correct.
Have you ever seen a palm plant? Have you ever seen the palm oil, the palm kernel plant kind of thing? I don't know the proper name for it, but I saw it in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, is it warm or cold there?
It's pretty warm.
Pretty freaking warm. And it was really hot in this day. And there was this solid, it was like the top of a stick of chapstick. And it was like 95 degrees out. And my watch tells temperatures apparently. It was hot out, and they were like, this is the palm plant or whatever. And I was like, oh, what is it? And I touched it, like, oh my God, it's so greasy. They're like, this is back in 92, but like, we use this for oils. And I was thinking, this is like chapstick solid in 95 degrees. That is gross.
If you want a visual on what's happening to your receptor sites in your cells, that's a good one, is that it's really literally being covered in chapstick if you're eating coconut oil.
Yeah. This is great stuff. There's one thing we really want to cover before we go. As far as social and emotional stuff. So what are the biggest social challenges that people experience, and how can they overcome them on this diet?
I'm so glad you asked that, because actually that's what sort of why I joined this sort of plant-based education movement, because my background is, like I said, in education, psychology. I've been an administrator in schools. And so this idea of like how to get people to change, because we all know the science, right? If lifestyle change was about science, we'd all be the healthiest people in the world, because there's so much information out there. Now, granted, as you guys have mentioned, there's lots of misinformation, but I think for a lot of people who've been doing this research for a long time, Jane's father included, he feels as if you have the information, you'll make the change. Well, the challenge is there's all this other stuff that I think a lot of people forget about, which is the social aspect. I mean, we run these sessions when we do our Wrapping Your Head, Heart, and Hands conferences. We spend a solid hour with our people talking about hurdles and talking about the challenges they're going to face when they leave the driveway of our little event, because we all can sit in a room together and talk about this stuff. And so I think one of the biggest ones is the social piece. People think that they're going to lose out on the ability to celebrate, on the ability to go to family gatherings and take part in it. And for a lot of people, it's cultural identity, ethnic identity. If you're Greek and we have some Greek friends and they are so dyed-in-the-wool Greek, and then they think that they got to go home and turn away from the baklava or these different things, and their grandmother's going to scold them about it. So we just say, you got to make it non-threatening. So if you're going to get together with some friends and they're not plant-based, you just have to go into it and just not threaten them, not scare them. As we've mentioned, we're big fans of Dr. Doug Lisle and a lot of his suggestions on how to talk to other people about this, but you just have to make it non-threatening. Sometimes you got to bring your own food. Certainly having people over is easy, because you can always win them over with simple, delicious, whole food, plant-based meals. But I think you just have to go into it as, I'm trying this for a while. My doctor and I are talking about it, and you just got to make it, because you guys know, as soon as someone, and we've experienced this many times, is you get together with some friends and you get preachy about it. I mean, you can tell already. Jane and I can get preachy, and next thing you know, we're like climbing down people's throats about this stuff. But if you can't do that, if you want to engage in the social circles and talk about nutrition. And so you just have to kind of say, yeah, we're giving this a try. We're going to try it for a while. We'll see how it goes. I read this book. I didn't finish it. You kind of make it, not that it's true that you didn't finish the book, but you just have to make it non-threatening. And
that's how Doug describes it.
That's how Doug describes it. You say, I read some stuff, and my doctor and I are going to give it a whirl. And
I'm feeling okay.
And you know what's coming. What's the first question you're going to get from somebody socially?
Where do you get your protein?
Where do you get your protein? Right. And you know what Doug Lisle says? Have you seen him speak where he says this? You know what his answer is?
I have not. What is it?
He says, I don't know.
Totally disarming.
Yeah. And then you can just drop the mic, because as soon as you start to say, well, don't you realize that, and you go into your legume lecture and you start pulling out Novic charts and you're showing them, like you've pissed everybody in the room off, and you know that nobody in the room actually cares where you're getting your protein from. What they want to do is derail you.
They want to have some status above you.
Because what you've done is basically said to everybody in the room, I'm just a little bit better than you are. And as soon as you freak people out that way, they're going to come at you. Like they want to chop you down. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with protein. It has everything to do with you getting knocked off your horse. So you just have to make it non-threatening. So
let's go through this. You say to somebody, yeah, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a plant-based eater. And they say, where do you get your protein? Then you respond by saying, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
The next
I've been running marathons for the last 5 years somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
Guess I don't need it.
Well, tell me this. I think my gut tells me that they would follow up and they would say, oh, you're protein deficient, you're protein starved, you need to eat more protein, you need more eggs, you need more meat, you need more fish. And here's why. And then all of a sudden now you're on the defensive. Am I wrong?
I would say them, you know what? It's funny you say that, because I actually did a little bit of research into that, and I couldn't find one documented case of protein deficiency
in the United States. Yeah, I mean, you go to Ethiopia. If you go to Ethiopia and find a kid that's got kwashiorkor, then you're going to have a protein deficiency. And you know what? In a doctor's office, I've been told this by numerous doctors now, and I've asked this question. Do you know what the test is for someone with a protein deficiency? If you can walk into the office. If you can walk into a doctor's office, you do not have a protein deficiency. I mean,
basically, if you're eating enough calories, you're getting enough protein, because back to the very first answer, Mother Nature got it right. Her ratios are right. The amount of protein, carbohydrate, fat, water, fiber, magic, it's all in there.
Yeah, I mean, my snappy answer to somebody who would question protein amounts would say, I would say, I want you to do some research about what contains the most proteins. Go online and search food protein content and look it up, and then tell me what you find next time we talk. Just keep it in profile, because, people look at those lists and you realize that there's so many other vegetables and legumes out there that have way more protein, not wrapped in layers of saturated fat. They're so much better for you. So
And cholesterol and casein.
This is great. I love it. Okay, so one last question for you guys. When are Robbie and I coming over for dinner? That's what I want to know.
Well, look at our environment. See, it's snowy. And you live in a square box and you live in a house. Looks like her apartment. I don't even know where. So where are you guys?
I'm in Santa Monica.
And I live up in San Francisco.
You guys really want to come to Cleveland, Ohio? Really?
No, I don't have any burning desire to go to Cleveland, Ohio, but I do have a burning desire to sit down and eat a meal with you guys. So
Absolutely.
We're going to be in Pasadena actually in March for the Engine 2 retreat weekend thing there. I don't know if Pasadena is near y'all.
Adam told me about that, so I'll definitely see you all there for
We'll
sure.
see you there. And sorry, are you going to be there?
I'll make my way there. No question. I'll be there.
Okay.
Well, if you ever want to come, Dr. Esselstyn does a 5-hour thing at the clinic.
He would happily have you
He
guys
would
come.
love to have you guys go. Like, if he often will comp and, say to people like, hey, if you're practitioners, come
Or do what you do, education.
Yeah, if you do what you guys do, come for free. If you can get yourself here, you can sit in on the session. He does a 5-hour thing at the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Center. You have a place to stay. We've got 2 houses.
We'll feed you. We'll get Lake Erie to catch on fire again for you.
Yeah.
We'll go to a Cavs game. We'll do all kinds of great stuff.
That's great.
I'm sold. Deal. I'm in 100%. Well, seriously though, thank you guys for taking so much time to be with us today, because the social aspects, the practicality, the actual nitty-gritty details of making a transition when you're already living a busy lifestyle, when you have to go to school, when you have a job, when you have multiple kids, that's the stuff that can actually be a showstopper. And so for so many of us, we're just pre-programmed to do, but yet we don't give ourselves the opportunity to actually make a full lifestyle change by carving out simple strategies that enable us to actually make this work. So getting your tips is like invaluable.
Well, so it's so interesting you say that, because it's really always baffling to us is that, it'll probably take you no more than 30 minutes to plan out a week of menus. So people will spend incredible amounts of time doing other things, like staring at the Browns losing on television, but they won't take 30 minutes to plan out their meals for 1 week. It really is about becoming a self-care warrior. We use that phrase a lot in our workshops, is that you have to decide, you got to look in the mirror one day and say, I'm going to become a self-care warrior. And by doing that, I'm going to make myself healthy. I'm going to make my family healthy.
There you go.
You got things like that. Brian makes these. This is a cutting board. If you have stuff like this that reminds you that you're a self-care warrior, it helps so much. Anyway, I'm just showing off his cutting boards.
So I think it's really about, like any lifestyle change, it's a priority. You have to decide that it matters to you and that it matters to your family and that you're going to do it. And if it starts with just you, we always say to people, they're always saying, oh, well, I have a household of kids, or my husband doesn't want to do it, or my wife doesn't want to do it. We always tell them, you got to become a self-care warrior for yourself. And then when people start to get interested and they notice you're losing weight and they notice how healthy and how much energy you have, they might start asking questions. And if you can set a good example, that's the first start. Don't worry about other people. They will come around.
You guys, we're trying to finish up here, but the name of my business actually is Healthcare is Self-Care, just to tie into that. And I'm saying that because you told us to talk about ourselves a little bit, but Healthcare is Self-Care. You can go on there and you can sign up to come to the women's conference and dance and eat good food and learn all this stuff and get Brian's chopping boards. They're plants only.